We're about to celebrate Shabbos of Shvi'i Shel Pesach, the seventh day of Passover, and we are in the midst of counting Sfiras Haomer, the counting of the Omer. What is the counting of the Omer? So it's cited in Vayikra. That would be Perek Chav Gimel, Pasuk, to begin with at least, Pasuk Tezvav. So that's Leviticus 23, Leviticus 23, 15. Svartem lachem machas Shabbos. And you should count for yourselves. This is a separate mitzvah of counting. We call it counting the Omer. It's counting. And it starts the day after the first day of Yom Tov, which is the second day of Yom Tov, but it's the day after a cessation of creative activity. This is implicit in the words Mimachas Shabbos. Miyom haviachem es Omer hatanufa. From the day that you bring the Omer offering, which is a wave offering of sheaves of barley. Sheva Shabbos T'midin. It should be 7 complete weeks. Ad Milchas Shabbos Hashvis Tisbu Chamishim Yom, till the day after the 7th of these weeks, which is 50 days. You will count 50 days. V'kravtem mincha chadosha Hashem, and you will bring mincha chadosha, a new grain offering, and that corresponds to the offering of the shtei halechem, of the 2 loaves that were offered on the holiday of Shavuos, which is 7 weeks later. So the mitzvah of counting the Omer is cited in the Torah. It's biblical. There's only one problem. We do not have service in the temple because we don't have a temple may be speedily rebuilt in our days. So we don't have a Korban Haomer. The Korban Haomer is brought the second day of Shavuos, of Pesach. We don't have it. We don't have a Beis Hamikdash. We don't bring the Omer offering. So what do we do with Sfira? Is it like held in suspense? No, we count Sfira. But according to most authorities, most Rishonim, counting these days is of a rabbinic authority rather than biblical. In other words, the counting of the Omer is triggered by the bringing of the Omer offering. If you don't have the Omer offering, you don't count, at least not from the force of biblical mandate. So the rabbis say you do count. So this is the Gemara in Menachos. So it appears to be, there's a discussion about how exactly the count is done. The count in its best form is that when you count, you say this is so many days and so many weeks in the Omer. And you say this is, let's say, 13 days in the Omer, which is 1 week and 7 days. Or 13 days, which is 1 week and 7 days in the Omer. So that's the best way to count. And Haomer says in the Gemara of Menachos, he says, Mani Yomi, v'lo Mani Shavui. No, we only count days, we don't count weeks. Why? Because this is a somewhat diluted mitzvah. Why? Because it doesn't have biblical effect. It's Omar Zechel Mikdashu. He says it's a commemoration of the service in the temple. That's it. So if it's a commemoration of the service in the temple, perhaps because we want to preserve the tradition of counting, so it's not of biblical force, but rather it's because of a practice that the rabbis instituted. But Haomer says, as a result, we don't do it fully the way they did it at the times of the temple. We only count days, we don't count weeks. In that same Gemara, Abaye and the Rabbanan of Rav Ashi, of the school of Rav Ashi, they say, no, you count both. They say, mitzvah lemimnei yomi, mitzvah lemimnei shavui. You count both, and we count it the regular way. Now, there is also an agadic reading of what we're counting for, which is that we're in anticipation of the giving of the Torah. And this harks back to the 3rd chapter of Shmos, in which Moshe Rabbeinu is expressing significant reservations about whether he's the man for the job. The confrontation is at the burning bush, which is at Har Chorev, or the area of Chorev, which is where Har Sinai is, Mount Sinai, where the Jews got the Torah. And Hashem says, you know what? This burning bush will be a sign for you. It will be an os that this is Shmos, Perek Gimel, Pasuk Beis. Vayomer ki ha'imach, I will be with you. God says, reassuring Moshe, and he says, V'zelecha ha'os ki ani shalachticha. And this will be a sign that I sent you. And then he says, when you take the children of Israel, when you take the people out of Egypt, you'll serve God on this mountain. That's Mount Sinai. In other words, with the receiving of the Torah. So according to the Medrash, this counting is actually a recapitulation of the counting of the children of Israel when Moshe let them know. He let them know about 50 days before the event, and there was a tradition that we're going to get the Torah. And they said, when are we going to serve God on that mountain? And he said, in 50 days. So they start counting. You could ask, why do they count up? Why don't they count down? If they're excited for 50 days, today's 50 days, today's 49 days, today's 48 days, we only have 47 days left, we only have 3 days left, 2 days left, 1 day left. But instead we count up. It seems to be the reverse of what we would intuitively think. Why is that? So we have another question, which is that although most authorities, most Rishonim, Rashi famously among them, says that it is no longer an obligation because we don't have a biblical obligation because we no longer have the Omer. The Rambam does not say that. As a matter of fact, the Rambam speaks in very categorical terms that he says, mitzvahs aseh lispor sheva shuos tamimos miyom havas Omer. There's an affirmative obligation to count 7 weeks from the day that you bring the Omer. U'mitzvah zo al kol ish misrael b'chol makom u'b'chol zman. This applies to every man, every place, and at all times. Women are exempt. It's not mandatory, although the practice is that they do it. Women are exempt because it's a time-triggered mitzvah. It's only at night, and it's only during a certain period of time. So for men, it is an obligation. For women, it can be voluntarily done. So what gives with the Rambam? The Rambam certainly knows that we no longer have the Beis HaMikdash, and he certainly knows that we no longer have a Korban Haomer. We no longer have the offering, which triggers the obligation to count. So what's going on? So the Aruch Hashulchan suggests that there's the machlokas, the dispute between Rashi and the Rambam. Rashi, on the one hand, who says it's a diluted obligation because we no longer have the Beis HaMikdash, we no longer have the Korban HaOmer, which was brought in the temple. And therefore, its force is of rabbinic nature, not biblical. And the Rambam says, no, it's midoraisa. So he says it could be dependent on what the actual purpose of the Omer is. According to the view that it is triggered from the day that we bring the Omer until the day that we bring the Shavuot-specific offering of the Shtei Halechem, of the 2 loaves of bread. So it's a counting of that lapse of time. He suggests that according to the Rambam adopts this notion that's cited in the Medrash, that the Jews were counting in anticipation of the receiving of the Torah. And if it's a mitzvah every year, then it's a recapitulation of the anticipation of the receiving of the Torah. And he says that the progression or the progress from the day of bringing the Omer to the day of bringing the Shtei Halechem is reflective of the ingredients of the 2 offerings. The Omer is made of barley. Barley, according to rabbinic literature, is primarily food for animals. Human beings can eat it. They can even put it in their cholent, and they can enjoy it. But generally speaking, animals eat barley. Humans eat products made of wheat, of flour that is ground of wheat. And he says that the kickoff of the count with the Korban HaOmer, which is made of barley, is reflective of the notion that without the Torah, we have more in common with the animals than we do with a refined human being. That with the Torah, we are refined human beings. And that's why we can then eat this symbolically, this offering that is made of the Shtei Halechem of Shavuos, which is the anniversary of the receiving of the Torah of Revelation. So then we eat it as a result we eat it out of wheat, because now with the giving of the Torah, we have a framework, a structure within which we can now achieve our full refined human potential. So what does the Rambam do with the fact that we don't have the Omer? So he says, no, you have the cause and effect wrong. We do not count, says the Aruch Hashulchan, according to the Rambam. We don't count from the beginning, from the bringing of the Omer until the bringing of the Shtei Halechem. The trigger of the obligation is not the bringing of the Korban HaOmer, this Omer offering, this barley offering. On the contrary, the bringing of the barley offering commemorates the beginning of the count. And the bringing of the Shtei Halechem memorializes or signals the end of the count. We've achieved a certain progress. We've achieved a certain accomplishment in these 50 days. Now, one would expect, we know that the children of Israel, when they left Egypt, were virtually indistinguishable from the idol-worshipping Egyptians. There are certain differences, but the Gemara records how the ministering angels proclaimed, why are you treating the Jews any differently? Halalu Ovdei Avodah Zarah, halalu Ovdei Avodah Zarah. Both the Egyptians and the Jews they serve idols. They're not pure in their worship. But what we see is that there is an opportunity to work towards the receiving of the Torah and to be worthy of, be on a level where it is appropriate for us to receive the Torah. And that may answer the question about why are we not counting down, which is to tick off the days that have passed, but rather we're counting up, which is to accomplish with each of those days a certain spiritual elevation. And in anticipation of the receiving of the Torah, we work on ourselves and we anticipate the need to be on a higher level. So this is day 1 of our, let's call it, exercise. This is day 2 of our exercise. When you get to day 50, then you're going to be in shape. We recapitulate the anticipation of Kabbalas HaTorah, of the receiving of the Torah every year, because we want to make ourselves worthy of receiving of the Torah every year. Have a good Shabbos and a good Yom Tov.